Hey listeners, thanks for dropping in. I'm Christy.
And I'm Melissa. And this is Buried Motives, where we dig deep into the details of some of the most gruesome
Dirtbag murderers.
Hey listeners.
Welcome back to Buried Motives.
We are glad you're joining us for another episode of Buried Motives.
And the last one this year.
Oh, that is right.
It is, because we're going to take a break. We've done this for a couple Christmases now, and it's just needed. It's time.
It's just a nice way to spend the holidays.
It's true. Typically, we take 2 weeks. And to be honest, when we take those 2 weeks off, we just work to catch up. So this time we've decided to take a little bit longer. Because we research so in depth, it does take a toll on us sometimes, being so immersed in murder all of the time. So we're going to take 4 weeks this time, you guys.
But don't worry, we will keep you entertained with other things.
We will. We'll still have things uploaded to our feed each week, but we will be back with new content on January 16th.
And just know, while we're away, we'll miss you guys.
We totally will. We'll still be active on our social medias, so you can still interact with us there. And like Melissa said, we will still have content coming out for you. And truth be told, most of you don't listen through Christmas anyways and catch up later. Because you're busy too. So we appreciate those of you who understand us needing to take this little bit of a break. And hopefully that will mean that we will come back full force in January, raring to go.
But I'm raring to go right now, Christy, to hear the holiday case that you have for us today.
All right. The case I chose for you and our listeners today is one that I've been contemplating covering since we started this podcast. It's been on my original list. I hesitated in covering it for 2 reasons. 1, because of how awful it is, and 2, because I couldn't find a lot of childhood information about this dirtbag. That being said, we really don't need it. I did find background information about this guy, and after spending a lot of time researching, his motive is fairly clear. Today's dirtbag chose Christmas Eve to utterly destroy a family for the most selfish of reasons: money and pride. Christmas should be a time of giving, a time of love and celebration, but instead, Christmas of 2008 became one family's worst nightmare. Not only would they be planning the funeral of 9 people, but many children in this family became orphans in one quick swoop. What happened in this case is truly devastating, and no family should have ever had to go through it.
There were people that were left behind.
There was.
That's interesting.
Not because he didn't try.
Oh, there were survivors.
They were. This nightmare started unexpectedly on Christmas Eve, December 24th, 2008. The Ortega family had a long-standing tradition of getting together on Christmas Eve to celebrate the holiday season together. This particular Christmas, the Ortega family had gathered at the family's matriarch and patriarch's house. 80-year-old Joseph, who was lovingly called Papa Joe, and 70-year-old Alicia Ortega's home was filled with light and laughter. Their children and grandchildren, and I think even some great-grandchildren, had all come home to spend quality time together. The house was filled with about 25 people.
This sounds very familiar.
It does. Most of the adults were sitting at the kitchen table, having fun playing Texas Hold'em, which is a super fun type of poker and one of my own family's favorites to play. We even have a family trophy made that floats from house to house depending on who wins the latest game. Others at the Ortega home were playing video games, and because this was in Covina, California, a lot of the kids were playing outside near the swimming pool. When I first read that, I was like, what? Christmas Eve? But yeah. Oh yes, this is California.
That does not sound so familiar.
That does not. But I could picture this scene so vividly. Both Melissa and I have larger families and know exactly what this hustle and bustle of excitement would have felt like for the close-knit family. Time flies when you're having fun, and so as the time neared midnight, some of the family members began discussing heading home. Santa still had to come, and the kids needed to be tucked into bed so that they wouldn't miss his arrival. At around 11:30 p.m., one of the little girls peeked out of the window at the front of the house and made an exciting discovery. 8-year-old Katrina started to exclaim that she could see Santa coming up to the house with a large present. There was a man, dressed in a Santa suit, approaching the Ortega's home, dragging a large wrapped gift behind him. In her excitement, Katrina flung open the door to greet Santa. What happened next would forever change the Ortega family. As Santa approached the house, he raised his hand and began shooting. Katrina was the first one to be shot. She was shot in the face.
Oh my goodness.
Thankfully, she would survive this horrible attack, but 9 other people inside the house that night would not be so lucky. I cannot imagine how traumatizing this would have been for this little girl. She was only 8. How would this crumble your faith in things you thought were supposed to be good? And how could this not destroy your sense of safety? I will give an update at the end about this girl, who is now an adult. She is actually so remarkable. Once inside the house, this wretched man began shooting everyone that he could, and as fast as he could. People were screaming and yelling at each other to get down. Some of the people who were playing cards at the table crouched underneath to try and shield themselves, but it is believed that the shooter crouched down to shoot at them.
So do they know who he is? Do they recognize him?
Not at first. Some of them later do. But first of all they see is Katrina get shot in the face and Santa walking in, open fire on them. Thankfully, most of the kids were already outside or managed to run out the back of the house to safety. A neighbor later said that they saw a teenage boy run out of the house yelling, quote, "They shot my family!" One 20-year-old woman fled up the stairs and decided her only way to survive would be to jump out of the second-story window. She did so and broke her ankle and/or leg, but she did survive. There was also a 16-year-old girl who was shot in the back as she was running away, but thankfully also survived. This man walked into the Ortega home that night, not intending to leave any survivors. He walked around the house and made sure that everyone inside had been shot. Once he was confident that everyone was dead, he unwrapped the giant gift that he had dragged into the house with him. This dirtbag had hauled in a homemade flamethrower with him. He then proceeded to spray racing fuel gasoline around the house, and within seconds, the entire house was set ablaze. What the attacker wasn't expecting was an open flame inside the house. It is believed that when he started spraying the racing fuel, some sort of pre-lit flame ignited, since racing fuel is so much more potent than regular gasoline. Because of the severity of damage to the home, it was never discovered what exactly this fire source was. It is assumed to be possibly from a pilot light or even a candle burning somewhere in the house.
That's crazy, but just the fumes set on fire.
Mm-hmm. It was so strong. And so was the fire. The flames were said to soar 40 to 50 feet above the house and took 80 firefighters an hour and a half to put out. I saw pictures of the house ablaze, and it is unreal. It looks like something you would see in a movie.
That is a huge fire.
Mm-hmm. Letitia, one of the adults who had managed to flee the house, called 911. It was her daughter who had been shot in the face. Letitia had managed to escape with her wounded daughter to a neighbor's house. Letitia exclaimed to the 911 dispatcher that, quote, "My mom's house is on fire, and he's still shooting at them."
She would have had to run towards the gunfire to save her daughter.
Yeah, to grab her and get out.
Crazy.
Yeah.
But that's a mother's instinct.
Exactly. She probably didn't even think twice. It was just instinct. And how horrific to watch your daughter be shot like that. It only took moments for the calls from concerned neighbors to also start flooding in. However, by the time help arrived, it would be too late. The house would be near obliterated, and the crazed Santa would be long gone. It was said that when police first arrived, they could hear gunshots still inside the house. Firefighters could not allow police to enter the house because of the severity of the fire. It was later believed that the shots that they heard were more likely leftover ammunition exploding in the fire.
Because they figured he had already left.
He had already left.
You've totally got me intrigued, because I'm wondering who was missing from this family's Christmas dinner.
You're going to find out. The fire was finally put out at around 1:30 on Christmas morning. Authorities and residents of the community were in shock over what had happened. Covina was a quiet suburb, 25 miles east of Los Angeles. Most of the residents in this community were retired seniors. The Ortega residence was at 1129 East Knollcrest Drive. The local police chief later said that the scene that they came upon was indescribable. It would take hours and hours, all of Christmas Day, for police and fire personnel to sort through the wreckage. All 9 of the victims found in the rubble had to be identified through dental records. They were completely unrecognizable. This would have been awful for everyone involved.
Surprised, actually, there's much left.
It said they were pretty charred. And they didn't find them all at once either. It was just body after body. And I think one body was actually found the following day. Before we go on, I want to mention who the victims were and share their gravestone inscriptions, because this is how their remaining family chose to describe them. Joseph Antiago Ortega, or Papa Joe, was 80. He was born on July 3rd, 1929. His inscription reads, "Your sense of humor made us laugh. Your wisdom taught us about life. Your devotion to our family made us proud. Your strength encouraged us. Your hard work inspired us. And your love brought us so much joy. We've been given the best years of our lives because of you." Alicia Sotomayor Ortega was born on January 29th, 1938. She was married to Joe and was 70 years old at the time of her death. Her inscription reads, "You are the light that shines upon us, the love that fills our hearts, the voice that brings us hope, and the joy that makes us smile. Your spirit will live in each one of us forever." And then there's a Spanish quote underneath that translates to mean, "Rest in peace, and may God have you in his glory. Beloved daughter, sister, wife, mother, grandmother, great-grandmother, friend." The rest of the victims were Papa Joe and Alicia's children and one grandchild. James or Joe Ortega Jr. was born on June 8th, 1956. He was age 52. His inscription, "Your memory is our keepsake, with which we'll never part. God has you in his keeping. We have you in our heart. Beloved son, brother, husband, father, and grandfather." Joe Jr.'s wife was Teresa Ortega. She was aged 51, born on June 12, 1957. Her inscription reads, "When tomorrow starts without you, we won't be far apart. For every time we think of you, you're right here in our heart. Beloved daughter, sister, wife, mother, and grandmother." Charles Ortega was aged 50. He was born on December 3rd, 1958. His inscription reads, "As the days come and go, and the world moves on, I know you're still here. You'll never be gone. If tears could build a stairway and memories a lane, I'd walk right up to heaven and bring you home again."
Inscriptions are incredible.
Aren't they? I know, I had to include them. Because even though they're short, it says so much about that person. Charles's wife was Sherry Ortega. She was 45, born on October 14th, 1963. Her inscription, "Mom, you walked in beauty. You filled our lives with love, happiness, and laughter. Your loving ways were an inspiration, your love a blessing. You will live with us in memory and will forevermore in our hearts." Alicia Ortega Oritz was 46. She was named after her mother and born on April 4th, 1962. Her inscription reads, "Many tender memories soften your grief. May fond recollections bring you relief. May you find comfort and peace in the thought of the many joys your loved ones brought. Unseen, unheard, but always near, still loved, still missed, and very dear." Alicia's son was unfortunately also killed. Michael Andre Oritz was only 17. He was born on August 23rd, 1991. His plaque has pictures of him engraved onto it, and his inscription reads, "Walk beside me and keep me strong. Even though I miss you, I know you're home with God." Michael had been upstairs on a computer at the time of the attack and died when the house exploded into flames. And finally, Sylvia Ortega. She was born on July 5th, 1965, and was only 45. Her inscription reads, "In loving memory, beloved daughter, sister, mother, and friend. We'll love you forever, we'll like you for always. As long as we're living, our mommy you'll be." And if any of you have ever read the Robert Munsch book, Love You Forever, you will understand that quote and why it is so tender between mothers and their children. It's basically the story of how a mom cares for her child, and then as she ages, her child cares for her. Have you read that book?
Yes.
I know.
I have it memorized.
Do you?
Yes, because it was what I would recite to the kids as I was putting them to bed.
It's so touching. Well, a lot of us have read that book to our children.
And so many.
I know, but I just couldn't gloss over them. I had to talk about each one individually. At first, it was said that the bodies found were too badly burned and charred to determine who had died from the fire versus who had died from gunshot wounds. After a more thorough examination, it was determined that at least 3 of the people I just told you about died by gunshot wounds alone, 2 died as a result of the fire, and 4 of them were said to likely have passed from a combination of both.
Is that because there was bullets still in the body?
Or bullet holes they could see. A lot of them had actually been shot in the head.
Did this shooter have experience with a gun?
Didn't read that he had been in the military or was an avid hunter, but obviously knew how to use it.
Yeah. Because in the chaos, usually bullets are just flying every which way. It's not consistently headshots.
Right. There was nothing I could find in his past that would suggest that he should have been an expert. The annihilation of the Ortega family was not the only call that police received that Christmas about a gun-related death. 40 miles away, a man called 911 when he came home and found his brother shot to death inside his home. This would have been another horrible discovery for his brother to come home to at Christmas, not expecting his brother to be inside his house, let alone dead, especially in such a violent way. The man found at this scene was determined to be 45-year-old Bruce Pardo. He had been shot in the head after the Ortegas. His date of death was Christmas Day, December 25th, 2008. Police did not know if Bruce was connected in any way to the Ortega murders at first, until they began to look into his background. Bruce Jeffrey Pardo was born on March 23, 1963, in Los Angeles, California. Not much has been made known about his childhood, other than it was unremarkable. It did not seem that he had any major trauma or endured any abuse. He had a typical American upbringing.
So, sorry, did his brother find him after he had experienced all the trauma of that night and then went home to his own house and then found his brother dead there?
No, his brother was not there.
Okay.
This is the Ortega family, and now Bruce Pardo's body was found at his brother Brad's house.
Okay.
They're not Ortegas. And this is why at first police don't know if this is connected or not.
Right, because they don't know the family connection.
Right, not at first. But they would figure it out very quickly after talking to the surviving Ortega family.
Because some of them recognized him at the end.
Yes. Bruce was described as a smart and easygoing type of guy who earned a good wage as an electrical engineer. He was said to have both a bachelor's and a master's degree in the field. Police learned that years prior, Bruce had been in a relationship in the late 1990s with a woman named Alina Licano. Together, the couple had a son named Bruce Matthew, whom they called Matthew. When Matthew was just a toddler, on January 6, 2001, Bruce and Matthew were home alone. When Alina returned home from grocery shopping, she saw a distraught Bruce holding their limp son. Bruce said that Matthew had gotten away from him and had fallen into their backyard swimming pool in Woodland Hills. The couple rushed their son to the hospital, and he did survive the ordeal, and police did not suspect that anything foul was at play. This was an accident. Bruce was attentive to his son at the hospital. He hardly left his side and could barely even eat. Although Matthew survived the incident, it soon became clear that he was not going to be the same little boy as he was before that frightful day. Matthew sustained severe brain damage and was left a paraplegic. Bruce was all about his appearance and all about spending money on the things in life that he wanted. When Matthew became injured, this messed with his ideation of what he wanted his life to look like. Anyone who lives in North America knows how quickly medical expenses can add up. Before long, Matthew's medical bills had topped $340,000 and would only continue to grow as he would now require constant care for the rest of his life. This dirtbag dad decided that he no longer wanted anything to do with Alina or his son, and so he tried to wipe his hands of them.
Just left?
Mm-hmm. Alina ended up suing Bruce for financial aid towards their son's care. As a result of the court case, Bruce's insurance paid out $100,000. $36,000 of that amount was put into a trust for Matthew. After this, Bruce never spent another red cent on his son and abandoned both of them. He took off and really never looked back.
Odd behavior after being so attentive at his bedside.
Right? But to me, this is all we need to really know about this man's character. You don't get much more selfish than this. Some people would say it was too traumatizing for him, but so what? You're a grown-up. Your son needs you.
Deal with it.
Yes.
Yes.
Even if you can't be there emotionally, you could be there financially. You make good money.
Yeah.
With his girlfriend and son now behind him, Bruce carried on living his best lousy life. He was earning good money and having a great time. Years later, Bruce would meet a new love, a beautiful woman named Sylvia. At first, police did not see the immediate connection between what happened to the Ortegas and this relationship of Bruce's. Imagine their faces when they learned that Bruce's wife, Sylvia Pardo's maiden name was Sylvia Ortega, and was one of the people killed in the Covina Christmas massacre. Police had to look into this relationship to determine if Bruce was another victim connected to the crime, or if he was the dirtbag responsible for 9 deaths and more injuries. After a short courtship, Bruce and Sylvia were married on January 9, 2006, just 2 years before the murders. The lovebirds were said to be happy. Sylvia had a 5-year-old daughter from a former relationship, and Bruce welcomed her into his life with open arms. I did read in a few sources that Sylvia might have had 2 children from a previous relationship, but I'm unsure if that's true. That child could have been older and not living with them, which is what I assume. In 2006, Sylvia would have been around 43, so she could have easily have had an adult child by then. So I do think she had 2, just one was still living with her.
Makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Once married, Sylvia and her daughter moved into the home that Bruce already owned in Montrose, which is about 15 miles north of LA. Their home was not far from the Holy Redeemer Catholic Church, where the family attended and where Bruce volunteered as an usher for the children's mass. The couple got a brown Akita dog and named it Saki. Bruce would be seen walking the dog around their nice neighborhood. Together, the couple earned over $150,000 a year. Today, that would be closer to $225 US and over 315,000 Canadian dollars a year.
So they were doing pretty well.
Very well. Bruce did make the majority of this income by far, $122,000 versus $31,000. Bruce was still working as an engineer, and Sylvia worked for a flower breeding company. During their short marriage, Bruce and Sylvia were able to save $88,500. This seems like a dream for most of us. However, perhaps it's true that money can't buy happiness, because in just 2 short years, everything came crashing down for the newly formed Pardo family. Apparently, Bruce had never told his new wife about his ex-family, whom he had abandoned during their hour of need.
Oh, that would be a shocker.
Yes.
You would totally feel like somebody had pulled the wool over your eyes.
You totally would.
Like you did not know that person at all.
Right? Can you imagine finding that out about your husband? And she found this information out by accident. It wasn't that she was even snooping or someone told her. So are you ready to learn that Bruce was an even bigger dirtbag than we originally thought?
Okay. How do you get much bigger? You killed 9 people and you've left your paraplegic son behind.
Well, Sylvia discovered, while going through their financial paperwork, that Bruce had been claiming a son on his income tax to gain tax-related benefits.
No way.
Yes.
He claimed that he was paying for his son.
Yes. So that he could get the tax reliefs for that.
Wow.
Yeah, wow is right. Imagine her surprise when she learned that he had turned his back on his own son after he became disabled.
But was still willing to use him for tax write-offs.
Yes. How gross of a human being do you have to be to do something like this? To not only cut your son out of your life because he was going to cause you too much work and money, but also to claim him as a dependent for your own financial gain, when you're not even hurting financially.
That is so wrong.
It is so wrong. It did make him a bigger dirtbag. Matthew's mother also had no idea that Bruce was claiming their son on his income tax returns. One source that I looked into said that he was actually receiving monthly benefits for his son.
What? How?
I don't know. But if that doesn't make you a greedy dirtbag, I don't know what does. Needless to say, I think it is fairly safe to assume that Sylvia would have lost respect for this man whom she was married to.
Kidding, especially since it seems like she comes from such a tight, close-knit family.
Yes, where everyone takes care of everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And he's welcomed her own daughter in and is treating her like his own daughter.
But not mentioning he actually has his own son.
Yes, a biological son who became disabled while he was watching him under his care. Yeah, it's pretty disgusting behavior. By the end of 2007, just 1 month before their second wedding anniversary, Sylvia began sleeping in a separate bedroom and would go and stay at her parents' house on the weekends. By February, she told Bruce that she wanted a divorce.
So now I'm starting to see why Bruce wants to kill the whole family. Because they're probably on board with Sylvia leaving him.
Definitely. I would be. Yeah. If that was my daughter and she found that out about her new husband. Be like, get out while you can. Because how could you ever trust someone like that? To know, oh, if something were to happen to us, he's just going to abandon us. Claiming that their marriage, quote, was not an option, Sylvia filed court papers asking for $3,166 per month in spousal support. She was also asking for her lawyer fees to be covered by Bruce. In these court documents, Sylvia accused Bruce of transferring most of their savings into a private account that she did not have access to. Their $88,500 savings account now stood at a mere $17,000. Bruce was not handling this breakup well, and considering how important money was to him and how greedy he was, he became extremely distressed. To make matters worse, in July of 2008, Bruce got fired from his job.
Oh, dang.
A big trigger.
Yeah.
Bruce was used to a certain lifestyle. He lived in a $500,000 home that had a monthly mortgage payment of $2,700, which even at today's standards is a hefty mortgage payment. His monthly expenses totaled $8,900. Bruce was overspending by $2,678, and consequently, he had racked up a credit card debt of about $31,000.
It all sounds like it sucks.
It does. So let me put it into perspective in today's dollars. Bruce was spending about $13,000 US every month. So like 18,000 Canadian.
On bills and everything.
Just on everything. That's what he was spending, $18,000 Canadian. You can imagine his panic when he suddenly lost his job and his wife was leaving him. Not only would his image be ruined, but so would his lifestyle. In court documents, Bruce stated, quote, "I was not given a severance package from my last employer at termination, and I am not receiving any other income. I am desperately seeking work." In this document, Bruce was counteracting by asking the court to order Sylvia to pay him spousal support since he wasn't working. Not only was Bruce's request denied, but he was ordered to pay Sylvia $1,785 every month, plus $3,570 in back pay. This amount was about half of what she had originally been asking for. On December 18th, 6 days before the murders, the divorce was finalized. In this finalization, the payment amounts were actually waived. Bruce was awarded the house, but was ordered to pay Sylvia a lump sum of $10,000. He was also ordered to return her diamond engagement ring, that was worth a pretty penny, let her have most of the furniture, and to give Sylvia custody of their beloved dog, who is now living with her sister and brother-in-law.
Usually it's the woman that won't give the ring back.
Well, she didn't even have the option. He just took it. Mm-hmm. He's like, you don't want to be married to me? I'm keeping the ring. But he was ordered to give it back.
Because it's a gift.
Right.
I've watched enough Judge Judy to know this.
It was a gift. And they did get married. But the icing on the cake for him was that he had to also give her custody of their dog. Bruce was supposed to give a cashier's check to the attorney on December 19th, but never showed up with the payment. Bruce apparently told his lawyer that he was trying to come up with the $10,000 payment, but instead he had a plan to never have to pay it at all. A plan he had in the works for nearly 6 months already. This was not a snap decision.
Divorce proceedings going on for?
About 9 months before.
Okay.
Yeah. But in July is actually when he started planning this horrific murder. Because beginning at that time, in July, when he got fired, Bruce began collecting the items that he would need to carry out his sinister plan. I think getting fired was likely his last straw needed to push him over the edge, even if he didn't appear that way. People later stated that the divorce proceedings were civil and that Bruce often appeared to be upbeat in nature. He was falling apart, but hiding it well. First, Bruce started purchasing guns. He had 4 semi-automatic handguns on him at the time of the attack. Bruce also purchased hundreds of rounds of heavy ammunition for these said guns. Bruce also started acquiring the items he needed to build his flamethrower. In September, Bruce ordered his extra-large Santa outfit from a costume maker who was located less than 2 miles from his home. The suit was complete with boots, a belt, glasses, and a hat. Bruce told the shop owner that he needed the suit for a party in November. Bruce had ordered it bigger than he needed and told the shop owner that he wanted it extra large so he could be extra jolly. The shop owner later commented how eerie this was to him later when he learned that Bruce was wanting the suit extra big so that he could conceal multiple guns inside of it.
Yeah, that's disturbing.
Mm-hmm. And you'd be making this suit thinking, oh, this is going to be for a fun Christmas party.
Mm-hmm. Just the fact that he chose to do it on Christmas is so disturbing.
Right. And dress up as Santa.
Mm-hmm. It's twisted.
It's very sinister. Right before Christmas Eve, Bruce secured 2 different rental cars to help him in his plan. On Christmas Eve, Bruce entered his regular cafe stop where he often went to enjoy a coffee and a raspberry cheese Danish. On this day, he ordered a turkey sandwich to go along with his coffee and Danish. He sat at a corner booth and watched the people running around doing last-minute Christmas errands. The cafe worker said that before Bruce left, just 11 hours before he would do the unthinkable, he shook the worker's hand and said, quote, "Goodbye and Merry Christmas to you and your family." When the worker said, "You too," Bruce just quietly smiled. Bruce's neighbor saw him leave his house around 10 p.m. Christmas Eve, and when he asked Bruce where he was going, he told him he had a Christmas party to go to. Bruce knew that the Ortega family had a yearly tradition of spending Christmas Eve together. He not only wanted revenge on his ex-wife, but he wanted to take it out on her entire family. Although it would initially appear that Bruce had planned to take his own life after the murders, that was actually not part of his plan.
Oh.
Because Bruce hadn't expected the house to go up in flames when it did, he was actually burned quite extensively while spraying racing fuel around the house.
So he knew he wouldn't be able to get away with it.
Yes. When his body was examined, the angle of the gunshot wound was said to be plausible for a self-inflicted gunshot wound. There was evidence that Bruce was planning to flee, but then changed his mind. The reason that police believed he changed his mind was the severity of the burns. Bruce had third-degree burns across a large area of his body. These burns were so bad that part of the Santa suit that he was wearing became seared to his flesh. He would have been in an immense amount of pain and wouldn't have been able to carry out his getaway plan. Instead, he drove to his brother's house and ended his own life, leaving his body for his brother to find. Also on his body, police found $17,000 cash, saran wrap to his legs and hidden in a girdle, and a plane ticket.
So that was his initial plan.
Yes, he was going to get out of Dodge. Bruce used a rental car to drive up to the Ortega's house. Afterwards, this car was seen leaving the scene with its lights turned off. Police were able to later locate the suspicious car about a block away from Bruce's brother's house. Bruce had managed to change his clothes, and when the police opened the door of this car, they could see the Santa suit sitting on the seat. Thankfully, they noticed that something was awry.
Wait, I'm confused. I thought it was burned to his body.
Pieces of it were. So he had taken as much of it off as he could, but some parts were seared into his flesh.
Gotcha.
But he couldn't be running around in a Santa suit after what he had done.
No.
So he had packed street clothes with him. So police find this car, they open up, they see the Santa suit sitting on the seat, but they notice that something's not right. Police called the bomb squad and learned that Bruce had rigged the vehicle so that when the Santa suit was lifted from the seat, a tripwire would ignite a flash fire and 200 rounds of ammunition would explode. The car did explode, but no one was hurt. I saw pictures of this blue 2008 Dodge Caliber, and it was burned crisp. But what a dirtbag wanting police to blow up with this car. Why not just blow it up and
destroy the evidence, but not harm other people?
Exactly. The Covina police chief said about Bruce, quote, "This guy was sharp. He just had the expertise and the motivation to make a device that he could use for mass destruction."
He was just angry at the whole world.
He was. Although Bruce had booked a Canadian airline ticket from LAX to Minnesota with a connecting flight to Iowa, police believe that he might have also had plans to flee to Mexico. They thought this because he had pamphlets about going to Mexico inside the second rental car. Bruce had a friend in Iowa, so they believed that he could have been planning to go there first and then possibly flee to Mexico. The friend in Iowa later told police that Bruce had told him he was coming for a visit, but never made his flight. This being said, I do want to note that I found discrepancies in the location of the flights. Some say it was Illinois, and others say he purchased a plane ticket to Canada, but I think it was just a Canadian airline. The second getaway vehicle was found parked outside the home of Sylvia's attorney. Inside this RAV4 sport utility vehicle, police found a spare fuel tank for his flamethrower, the maps of Mexico, clean clothing, camping supplies, 2 computers, and Christmas presents.
I had her lawyers.
It is believed that Bruce was planning to drive to his ex-wife's attorney's house and kill him before fleeing in his final getaway car.
Oh, so he had kind of set it up like tic-tac-toe. Like,
Yep.
I'll go here, and everything's ready for me when I get there.
Yep. So his plan was to leave the Ortega's house and drive to the attorney's house, kill him, and then flee in the RAV4 in the second rental.
Instead, he got burned, so he went to his brother's house.
Right. And that's why the car was found a block away. It is also strongly believed that Bruce was planning to kill his own mother, Nancy Windsor, that night. Nancy was supposed to be at the Ortega's party.
Oh.
Bruce felt betrayed by his mother because she sided with the scorned women in his life. She was supportive of her grandson and had also sat in support of Sylvia during the divorce proceedings. They had remained close friends. Basically, Nancy knew her son was a dirtbag and wasn't about to support that. Call it a miracle, but that Christmas Eve, Nancy didn't feel well, and so she decided at the very last minute to stay home, a decision that saved her life.
That would feel so eerie afterwards, though.
Knowing that he had intended to kill you, knowing that you would be there.
Right, but also that you had survived when other people hadn't.
Yeah, there would be survivor's remorse, I'm sure, or survivor's guilt. When police searched Bruce's home in Montrose, they found more of the racing fuel used in the fire, 5 empty boxes for high-powered semi-automatic handguns, and 2 high-powered shotguns. When the news spread about what Bruce Pardo had done to his ex-wife and her family, many people were shocked. People who knew Bruce said that there were no warning signs, that nothing he did would indicate that he had such deadly plans in place.
Somebody must have been paying attention, because that's a lot of planning.
It is, but honestly, nobody came forward and said they saw anything. Bruce had even told one friend that he would see them at midnight mass that Christmas Eve. Bruce had dated the same girl for all 4 years of high school, and she said she was heartbroken and shocked when she saw him on the news. She said about the Bruce she knew, quote, "He was a very easygoing person, a very friendly guy." She said, quote, "I would never in my right mind think he would ever do anything like this." Police also had a hard time connecting the dots. Bruce was clearly a dirtbag. However, he never had a criminal record and didn't seem to have any issues with violence. Sylvia's attorneys had even expressed that Sylvia never once expressed any concern or fear that Bruce would try to hurt her. Bruce's brother Brad, who found his body, said, quote, "We never saw this coming. We never thought this would ever happen." Brad knew that his brother was depressed, but again didn't see any warning signs. Brad and his wife were sickened by what Bruce had done. They planned to write the Ortega family apology letters.
Did they actually do it?
I couldn't find out if they did. But Bruce's family have been very loving towards the Ortega family. Nancy, Bruce's mother, was also extremely distraught over what her son did before ending his own life. Nancy was interviewed by the LA Times and stated that everything from her son's estate would go to the Ortega family and to her grandchildren, including Sylvia's children from her former relationship. In total, 13 young children were orphaned by Bruce.
It's crazy.
That's just young children.
Mm-hmm.
The extended family of the Ortegas banded together and vowed to help their family. From what I gathered, the father of Sylvia's children had been in a car accident and had already passed away when all this happened. His family had stayed in the children's lives and were utterly heartbroken when Sylvia and her family were murdered. And I believe Nancy was working with this family to help set up trusts for the kids. Nancy spoke publicly about how hard this was for everyone. She said that she was near falling apart. She said, quote, "I have to be honest with you. I'm having trouble holding myself together." And as remarkable as Nancy was, she mentioned how amazing the Ortega family and the extended family of Sylvia's children were. About this, she said, quote, "I will say this to you. It would have been so easy for that family to hate me. And Sal was just so wonderful. He said to me, 'We love you and your family. I love them so much, and it's very hard that this has happened.'" And this truly would have been so devastating for all involved, which was emphasized by the mayor of Covina, who stated that, quote, "There is a feeling of total helplessness. It has emotionally affected a lot of people in Covina."
There were just so many people. How could it not?
And like Nancy said, it would have been easy for everybody to just hate
The rest of his family?
Yes. and they just welcomed her with open arms, and she wanted to help take care of them. Katrina, the girl who was only 8 years old at the time of the shooting, who had opened the door to who she thought was Santa and was shot in the face, later said that she still believed in Santa. She had not let this experience ruin her life. She had been an advocate for victims of shootings. Katrina has been actively involved in local protests and has spoken out about gun violence and the need for gun controls. And honestly, I think this really speaks to what kind of person Katrina was and the Ortega family. She used this horrible experience that she had as a child and was trying to do better in the world because of it, trying to connect with other people who have been through similar things.
Right.
Because unless you've been through something like that, we have no idea what that would be like to experience. Before ending, I want to very briefly highlight the beautiful Ortega family and how their story of love started. Joe and Alicia only knew one another for 3 weeks before they got married in Mexico in 1955.
3 weeks?
3 weeks from when they met and got married.
That is love at first sight.
Right?
But it must have been true love because they had been married for so many years.
Yes. This was 1955, and they just jumped in both feet and stayed in with one another.
That is admirable.
Isn't it?
Yes.
I just fell in love with this story, and that's why I wanted to share it. While on their honeymoon, it was said that Alicia told her new husband that she would have to die first because she loved him too much and could never live without him. Joe responded in Spanish, what is translated to mean, God doesn't hear you, because he couldn't imagine life without her either. That made me cry.
That's sweet.
Isn't it?
Yes.
Their love for one another and for their family that they made together never once wavered. They were laid to rest together alongside 4 of their children, 2 of their daughter-in-laws, and 1 grandson. Hundreds of people attended the mass funeral that took place at the Holy Name of Mary Catholic Church in San Dimas. It was standing room only. People in attendance wore orange ribbons pinned to their shirts, and orange ribbons had been tied to the trees in the community to represent hope amidst tragedy. Kids from Michael's school attended wearing t-shirts that read, quote, "We'll miss you, Mike." At the funeral, there were large, blown-up photos of each victim. In front of each picture was a small wooden box and a silver urn with their respective names inscribed on them. About the family at the funeral, it was said, quote, "The Ortegas are a family that live for today, a family that lives in the moment and gets the most out of every day." The Ortegas were said to love baseball, playing cards, and golf. It was also said that, quote, "The Ortega family is the closest family that I have ever met. They are very much a clan. If you knew them, then you felt like part of their clan." It was also said that, quote, "They approached all of life together. They are all connected to one another through the good, the bad, and the ugly." And that is the story of an ugly soul, the selfish dirtbag who was pushed to his limit and savagely took the lives of 9 innocent people, the abhorrent monster who chose the spirit of Santa and Christmas to carry out his evil plan, the low-life coward, Bruce Jeffrey Pardo.
Just have to say, his limit was not a very big one. Because honestly, life was not that bad for him.
No! He had turned his back on his first family. How come he couldn't just turn his back and walk away the second time? Because he was a massive dirtbag, I suppose.
That is very true. And now we're going to take a break from dirtbags for a few weeks.
But in the meantime, we do wish all of you a very safe and a very Merry Christmas, and we promise that we will be back.
With more dirtbags.
Definitely. Mid-January with brand new cases for you.
Until then.
See ya!
Bye. What I'm designing.
You can't design and listen at the same time.
Oh, I gotta do multitask, Christy.
Nope. I sit nicely and listen to you when you tell yours. All right, this is our testing.
Christy's being ballsy again, you guys.
Someone has to keep us in line over here.
Yes. Never mind. Scratch that.
And after a more thorough investigation. No.
Don't you find it curious that as long as I keep my yawn silent, it doesn't make you yawn?
No, I'm fighting it right now.
Oh.
I told you I'm a cheap yawn. But yawning little woman.
I'm sorry. Okay, that sounded better.
I didn't proof this.
I can't even remember what you said, but I don't know. That doesn't make sense to my brain.
You have to remember, I was writing this with a migraine. A really bad one. It's a Christmas miracle I got it done. The Ortega's area. No, R. I didn't put a space, so it actually spells area, but R.
You're actually going to leave it in there? And now we're going to be dirtbags.
Why not? We're doing two different?
I don't know. I was only joking and you rolled with it.
Oh.
Yeah, I think so. That's way better than calling ourselves dirtbags. And now we're going to be dirtbags. Could you imagine? They're like, they're going to go commit some murder.
Then we get framed for murder.
Yeah.
It was premeditated. That's okay. We'll just go to Ohio and go on a little shopping spree. We don't have to pay for it.
Money.
I know.
Another Sound Off Media Company podcast.